There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It lingers quietly, disguised as guilt. It visits you at night when the world goes still and whispers every mistake you've made, the words you said, the choices you regret, the moments you wish you could go back and change. You replay them over and over, like punishment. You tell yourself you should have known better, done better, been better. But the truth is, you were doing the best you could with what you knew then. You didn't have the clarity, the strength, or the experience you have now, and yet you still hold that younger version of yourself to impossible standards, as if growth means you should have always known what you know now. You forget that wisdom comes after the wound. That pain is not proof of failure, but the evidence of learning. You can't hate yourself into healing. You can only forgive yourself into peace. So, take a breath. You don't have to keep reliving what's already over. You are not the person who made those mistakes anymore. You are the person who learned from them. You've spent so much time punishing yourself for not knowing what you couldn't have known. You look back at old moments and think, how could I have been so blind? But you forget. Clarity only comes after confusion. Understanding only blooms after the pain has already passed through. You blame yourself for staying too long, for trusting the wrong people, for ignoring the signs. But back then, love looked like hope, kindness looked like forgiveness, and survival looked like holding on. You weren't foolish. You were human. You were learning how to love, how to trust, how to navigate the mess of being alive. The person you were didn't need your judgment. They needed your compassion. They needed someone, anyone, to say, you didn't fail. You were just trying. That someone has to be you now. Forgiveness isn't saying it didn't hurt. It's saying you're ready to stop letting it define you. It's choosing to stop carrying the version of yourself that only knew how to survive. Because now you're learning how to live. The past doesn't need your punishment. It needs your peace. And that peace begins the moment you whisper to yourself, I forgive you. You did the best you could. Sometimes you think forgiveness means forgetting, but it doesn't. You don't erase what happened. You release the weight of it. You stop letting those memories control how you see yourself. Because every time you revisit the past with anger, you're reopening a wound that's already trying to heal. It's easy to look back with the eyes of who you are now and judge the person you were then. But that's unfair. They didn't have the tools, the voice, or the strength you have today. They were still trying to figure out how to survive a world that didn't always feel safe. And even when they made mistakes, they were still trying to love, to belong, to be seen. You owe them grace, not shame. When you forgive yourself, you take your power back from the past. You stop being trapped in the cycle of if only and start living in what's next. You stop being the villain in your own story and become the narrator again, the one who chooses how the story continues. You don't have to keep proving you've changed. Living differently is proof enough. The lesson has already done its job. It taught you how to see. Now it's time to thank the pain for what it showed you and gently set it down. The hardest person to forgive will always be yourself. You can understand why others did what they did. You can even empathize with the people who hurt you. But when it comes to your own mistakes, you hold them like proof that you're not enough, proof that you failed. But guilt isn't meant to be carried forever. It's meant to wake you up, not weigh you down. It shows you where you need to grow, and once it does, you're supposed to let it go. Yet somehow, we mistake guilt for responsibility. We believe that holding on is the same as making amends. But true responsibility is softer. It's learning, not punishing. You can't rewrite what happened, but you can decide what it means. You can choose to see your past not as a story of failure, but as the beginning of your becoming. Because every mistake, every regret, taught you something essential about who you are. You learned boundaries from betrayal. You learned honesty from silence. You learned to love differently because of how you once didn't. And that's what forgiveness really is. Not forgetting, but understanding. Not erasing, but integrating. It's saying to your past self, you didn't ruin anything. You were just learning how to live. There's a moment when you realize that holding on to guilt doesn't make you a better person. It just keeps you stuck in the same place. You keep replaying what happened, as if punishing yourself long enough will somehow undo it, but it won't. The past doesn't change just because you hurt enough. Pain doesn't rewrite history. It only keeps you living inside it. Forgiving yourself isn't about excusing what happened. It's about accepting that you were human, limited, imperfect, trying. There's a softness that comes with that truth, a compassion you once reserved for everyone except you. And when you finally offer it inward, it changes everything. You start to understand that regret is not a life sentence. It's a signal. It's your heart saying, "This matters to me. I want to do better next time." And that awareness means you already have. You've already grown beyond the person who made the mistake. That's what guilt was trying to show you. Not that you're broken, but that you care. So instead of asking, "How could I have done that?" ask, "What did it teach me?" Because the lesson is what stays, not the shame. And with every lesson, forgiveness becomes less of an idea and more of a way of being. Forgiveness is not a single moment. It's a quiet practice that happens again and again. Some days, you'll feel at peace with what happened. Other days, the memories will resurface and the guilt will whisper, "You should have known better." That's when you remind yourself gently, "I didn't know then what I know now." It sounds simple, but it's the most honest truth you can give yourself. You can't expect your younger self to have wisdom they hadn't earned yet. Growth takes time, and mistakes are part of that time. Every choice you made, even the wrong ones, led you to this clarity. Without them, you wouldn't understand compassion the way you do now. You wouldn't recognize what peace feels like, or why it matters so much. You see, pain refines you. It shapes your heart in ways ease never could. But you have to let it teach you, not trap you. If you only replay the pain, you miss the purpose it carried. If you only blame yourself, you silence the voice inside you that's trying to forgive. You are allowed to look back and still love the person you were, the one who didn't know yet, who tried, who failed, who learned. They were not the villain of your story. They were the beginning of your healing, and forgiving them is how you move forward without carrying the weight of every version of you that came before. Sometimes forgiveness looks like a deep breath in the middle of the night, a quiet reminder that you can stop fighting ghosts. You don't need to keep defending yourself to a past that no longer exists. You've already lived those moments, learned those lessons, felt those regrets. There's nothing left to prove there. The mind loves to replay pain because it wants to find closure. But forgiveness isn't found in repetition. It's found in release. You can't think your way to peace. You have to feel your way there. You have to let your heart catch up to what your head already knows, that it's over and you survived. Sometimes survival itself is enough. You didn't handle it perfectly, but you made it through. You got up again when you didn't know how. You kept going, even when you didn't believe you could. That resilience deserves recognition, not resentment. You don't heal by pretending the past didn't happen. You heal by letting it rest, by saying, I forgive myself for being human, by knowing that growth doesn't erase the pain. It transforms it into wisdom, and that wisdom becomes your compass, quietly guiding you toward gentler choices next time. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting who you were. It means finally embracing every version of you with the same tenderness you give others. Forgiveness often begins in the smallest of moments, the ones no one sees. You're doing something ordinary, like washing dishes or walking home, and a memory surfaces, sharp and familiar. That old ache returns, the one that whispers, you shouldn't have done that. But this time, instead of turning away, you breathe through it. You don't fight the feeling, you let it pass through you. That's what healing looks like. Not the absence of pain, but the softening of it. You stop flinching at your past and start acknowledging it as part of your story. You realize that regret and grace can exist in the same space. You can wish you'd done better and still love the person who didn't know how. It takes time to rebuild trust with yourself. For so long, guilt made you believe you weren't worthy of your own kindness. But every time you choose compassion over blame, you rebuild a little more of that trust. You begin to believe that you're not your mistakes. You're the person who learned from them. The heart remembers, but it also forgives. Slowly, quietly, faithfully. And one day, you'll think about what once broke you and feel something new instead. Gratitude. Not for the pain itself, but for what it taught you about love, about limits, about you. There will be days when forgiveness feels far away. You'll wake up and the guilt will still be there, waiting, whispering that you don't deserve peace. But that voice isn't truth. It's memory. It's the echo of old pain that hasn't yet realized it's safe to rest. And the only way to quiet it is with kindness, not resistance. Tell yourself what you needed to hear back then. You were trying. You didn't know. And that's okay. Repeat it until it starts to sink in, until your heart begins to believe what your mind already knows. You can't hate yourself into healing. You can only love yourself there, gently, one breath at a time. Some days, forgiveness looks like progress. Other days, it just looks like not giving up. Both matter. Both count. You don't have to reach a perfect peace to be forgiven. You just have to keep choosing not to carry the same pain forever. Eventually, you'll see that what you once called mistakes were actually beginnings. Every wrong turn brought you closer to clarity. Every heartbreak showed you what love truly needs to be. And every regret carved out space for grace to live. You've done enough apologizing. It's time to come home to yourself. At some point, you'll realize forgiveness is not a gift you give the past. It's a gift you give yourself in the present. You stop asking what could have been different and start asking what can be gentler now. You stop punishing yourself for being human and start allowing yourself to live like one. The person you were back then made choices with limited light. They couldn't see the whole path, but they walked anyway. They stumbled, but they moved. They got you here. To this version of you that now knows better, that now loves deeper, that now understands. You don't have to keep carrying resentment toward that version of yourself. They were not your enemy. They were your foundation. And the way you speak about them now matters. Every time you say, "I was so stupid," you build another wall between who you were and who you're becoming. But when you say, "I didn't know yet," you open a door instead. Forgiveness turns regret into gratitude. It turns pain into perspective. And it allows you to finally step out of the shadow of who you were and into the light of who you're still becoming. There's something powerful about realizing you can love every version of yourself, not just the polished one that finally figured things out, but the confused, clumsy, hopeful one who kept trying, even when it hurt. You start to see your past not as a list of wrong turns, but as a map of how far you've come. Every mistake, every heartbreak, every missed chance, they all pointed you here to understanding. You don't need to rewrite the story. You just need to change the way you tell it, because the words you use when you talk about your past are the ones your heart believes. And when you speak with kindness, your heart starts to heal. You might still feel flashes of shame sometimes. That's okay. Forgiveness doesn't mean the pain vanishes. It means it no longer owns you. You can feel it, remember it, and still move forward without collapsing under its weight. You can say, "I wish I had known better," and also say, "But I'm proud of who I've become because of it." Both can be true. Both are part of your story. Forgiving yourself isn't about erasing the past. It's about learning to live with it, softly, bravely, and without fear of remembering. There's a moment when you realize you don't need to earn forgiveness. You only need to allow it. You've already done the hard work, reflecting, learning, growing. The only step left is permission. Permission to stop holding yourself hostage to what's already over. You start to feel a gentle shift inside you. The memories don't sting as much. You can think about what happened without collapsing under the weight of it. That's how healing feels. Not like forgetting, but like remembering, with peace, instead of pain. You might still wish things had gone differently. That's normal. Regret doesn't disappear. It transforms. It becomes a quiet reminder of who you were, what you've learned, and what you'll never ignore again. You don't need to erase that part of you. You just need to hold it with grace. And one day, you'll look back on the version of yourself that made all those mistakes and feel something unexpected, compassion. Because now you see them clearly. They weren't careless. They were simply trying to find their way with the light they had. And that realization softens everything. Forgiveness starts as a whisper, then becomes freedom. Eventually, you learn that forgiveness is not about erasing your past. It's about reclaiming it. You gather up every mistake, every regret, every version of yourself you once tried to bury, and you say, you belong too. Because those pieces aren't proof of failure. They're proof of growth. You see how far you've come. Not just in strength, but in softness. The person who once judged themselves harshly now speaks with kindness. The one who once hid their pain now uses it to connect, to comfort, to understand. That's what forgiveness does. It turns your pain into empathy, your shame into wisdom. You stop needing to apologize for who you were. Instead, you thank them for trying, for surviving, for carrying you here. You realize they did the best they could with what they had, and now it's your turn to do better with what you know. The past will always be a part of you, but it doesn't have to define you anymore. It can simply be the story that taught you how to love yourself more deeply. Forgiveness doesn't rewrite who you were. It reminds you of who you've always been underneath the guilt, human, learning, and worthy of grace. The more you forgive yourself, the more you notice how different the world feels. It's not that everything becomes easy. It's that you stop fighting everything. You stop arguing with the past. Stop trying to control every outcome. Stop punishing yourself for not being perfect. There's a softness that begins to settle in your chest, a quiet peace that says, you can rest now. You start living from understanding instead of defense. You respond slower, speak gentler, breathe deeper. You make room for your mistakes instead of running from them. Because you finally understand that being human means getting things wrong sometimes. You don't need to apologize for that anymore. And the more grace you give yourself, the more grace you give others. You see people differently now. Their anger looks like fear. Their coldness looks like protection. Their mistakes look familiar. Forgiving yourself teaches you empathy in its truest form. You no longer need everyone to understand you. You just need to understand yourself. That's where peace begins. Not in the absence of pain, but in the acceptance of it. Not in perfection, but in compassion. And once you've tasted that, there's no going back to the person who thought they had to earn love through punishment. There comes a day when you finally stop looking backward. You no longer feel the need to revisit every moment that hurt, to justify, to explain, to wish things had gone differently. You understand now it all had to happen that way. Every mistake, every wrong turn, every heartbreak was part of the unfolding that made you who you are. You no longer see your past as something to fix, but as something to honor. Because even in your lowest moments, you were still becoming. Even when you didn't know better, you were still growing towards the version of yourself who finally does. And now, when you look in the mirror, you don't see the person who failed. You see the one who forgave, the one who chose love over punishment, compassion over shame, peace over perfection. Forgiveness doesn't mean you're done learning. It means you're ready to live again, free, light, unafraid of your own reflection. You've given yourself permission to move forward without carrying the weight of who you were. And in that moment, you realize something simple but profound. You were never unworthy. You were just unfinished. Now, you are still imperfect, still human, but finally, beautifully, at peace.